Oh, right, skip.
Eu gostei assim.
Dubbing over a seal? No, text me the link.
You know, the greatest trick Hollywood ever pulled was convincing the world that sharks are the only things to fear in the water. There be monsters. In the last video, we talked about how sharks might just be the most misunderstood creatures in nature, with a PR team that works about as hard as a whiteout's brain after 6 rounds of CTE. They've been done so dirty, they've actually overshadowed the other ichthyological insanity spawned from Satan's septic tank. These are 7 fish that should honestly terrify you more than any shark. This isn't really to substitute one fear for another, but I do think these fish could make a much more traumatizing nightmare.
I'm gonna pause. Alright, I'm back.
And it starts right here. Those eyes belong to a pair of arapaimas, also known as a pirarucu. You've definitely seen them before. Does this video ring a bell? It definitely rang his. It's one of the biggest freshwater middle fingers nature forgot to vault, usually growing to over 6 feet long and 200-something pounds. It's bad enough those are NBA point guard measurements, but the beefiest ones can get to 10 feet in length and weigh over 400 pounds.
Jeez.
This Geographic roid guppy usually eats other fish to go with fruits and seeds, but also birds and allegedly even monkeys sitting on branches too close to water. And if you don't believe that, it's because you haven't seen them hunt. They're explosively quick, and the aquatic black hole has been known to confuse feet for fish and violently pull people underwater. One zookeeper reportedly made the mistake of trying to retrieve a glove that had fallen into an arapaima pool, and in a split second got his hand, wrist, and several fingers broken. There's also the fact that a refrigerator-sized fish will yeet themselves out of water in self-defense. And let's talk about that defense. The plus-size bite is covered in heavily armored scales, not only tough enough to tank piranha attacks, locals historically use them as nail files. They've also used their tongues as scrapers, since these fish have teeth growing out of a bony tongue that can be used to effectively crush struggling prey against the roof of their mouths. You know nature got in its bag when it made a fish that can breathe air, and the Antichrist of the Amazon has a modified swim bladder that was repurposed as lungs, meaning this flex of a fish can survive 24 hours out of water. On one hand, that means they have to come up for air every 20 minutes or suffer the eternal shame of being a fish that finds a way to drown. But it also works out for them, because in low oxygen water where most fish become slow and sluggish, the air merchant menace can pretty much go on a killing streak. Now the question is, could an arapaima pack up a person? While there's no indication they see us as a snack, there are old stories of high-strung assault guppies effectively drowning people, likely by knocking them unconscious and leaving them incapacitated underwater. Not him, he's fine. You can unclench guidelines, he's good. But one man that almost wasn't was Jeremy Wade. He probably needs no introduction, but long story short, he's a zoologist who hosted the show River Monsters, which...
Thank you, I literally had no idea who this guy was.
Ended, but only because he caught every fish nature had to offer. But he almost caught an early life retirement after a pissed off paima struck him square in the chest and nearly caused irreversible damage to his heart. Not only did this fish nearly have us singing, the suspect wasn't more than 90 pounds. Remember, the overachievers compress the scales at 400 or, 180 kilograms worth of kill a man. So yeah, the arapaima is a shack-sized, air-breathing, armor-plated predatory vacuum, and strangely enough, it's not the fish I'm most scared of in the Amazon. But we'll get to that. The piranha actually isn't. If you remember from an earlier video, piranhas might be just as misunderstood as sharks. They're mostly just scavenging opportunists that our childhoods convinced us were way more of an issue. You cannot say the same for their cousins found in the Congo basin of Central Africa. The Goliath tigerfish can grow to nearly 5 feet long, over 100 pounds, and they're what people were told piranhas are times 10. They're in the same order, but where piranhas are primarily a swimming cleanup crew, tigerfish actively hunt for their bodies. And you'll find out, nature built this prehistoric problem to do exactly that. They have sharp dagger-like teeth that many swear are comparable to that of a great white, although I personally see them as more conical, like a crocodile, which is a coincidence since the saltwater variety are their only natural predators. But of course, the swimming expletive has also been known to murk smaller crocs. They have eerily strong eyesight to track prey, special organs to detect the vibrations they make underwater, and they're strong enough to brute force their way through the turbulent waters of their hunting grounds. They're considered one of the toughest freshwater fish time left behind, and tigerfish are even on record snatching birds out of the air. Not just birds, but swallows, some of the fastest and most maneuverable out there.
Sasuke Kojiro of the Sasuke Kojiro of the water.
Scientists studying them watched as 300 birds got permanently grounded by tigerfish in just over 2 weeks. They're so feared that in many places they're only known by one name, benga, meaning the dangerous fish. There's even a story of a young girl wearing a belt made out of bottle caps in order to ward off evil spirits. Ironically, it did the exact opposite and attracted a tigerfish who apparently confused the bottle caps for fish scales and nearly bisected the girl.
Jeez.
It's an extremely fast, explosive vice grip with almost zero prey prejudice. And I'd still rather take a bite from them than the fish up next. And that's cause next is the candiru. And a lot of y'all already know what road we're going down. The candiru is a tiny parasite in the Amazon, also nicknamed the vampire fish for their habit of invading the gills of larger fish and scraping the insides to feed off their blood. And
Nope.
with backward-facing spines and a powerful bite, it's nearly impossible to shake it off before it completes its liquid transaction. The horror comes from the legend of candiru being attracted to the chemicals in urine and swimming up the urethra of unlucky humans.
I remember this.
State that takes surgery to reverse. Imagine a syringe
Gross.
and a toothpick in your baby.
Ew, ugh.
The violation with gills is so feared. How much of this is even real? Most of the reports of people getting penetrated by peenfish are really sus at best. Apparently, they're not even attracted to the ammonia in human urine in the first place. There's a good chance that the candiru controversy came from European settlers coming home from long expeditions and telling these long, exaggerated stories to anyone who'd listen for status and attention. Yeah, but basically they were probably lying for clout. You have to remember, the whole piranha skinning a cow thing spawned from locals staging an event to impress the president. The truth is, your chances of peeing in the Amazon and getting frontal probed by a fish are about as much as you getting meal prepped by a shark or getting struck by lightning. Oh, my bad. And getting struck by lightning.
Okay, nothing to fear then.
I'd rather get tag teamed by the pets of Poseidon and the forces of Zeus than have a bloodluster up my urethra, no Franklin. If the odds ain't zero, they're just too high for me. But I'll happily take a candiru to the mandiru, then run into aquatic op number 4. In fact, I'm so afraid of it, I actually had to break my own rule for this video. The Humboldt squid obviously isn't a fish, but it's the closest thing to a living nightmare on this list. Let's be clear, at 5 feet, about 100 pounds, there are bigger squid. What sets Humboldts apart is they can hunt in packs of over 1,000. Yeah,
wow.
That's 3 zeros like a Tony Snell stat line. Nicknamed Diablo Rojo, there are old fisherman tales of men falling overboard, getting swarmed, and never coming back up. There's also stories of them curiously approaching divers before flipping and trying to rip their masks off. But who needs stories when marine biologist Alex Kirstich can tell you about the time several homicidal squids grabbed him and attempted to drag him down into the dark maw of the abyss. It gets worse when you realize what exactly happens when a red devil decides to take you to hell. Humboldts aren't just highly intelligent, they're covered in tiny red chromatophores that they can use to rapidly change color in order to communicate with each other. It's like Morse code but for Crip and calamari. We don't know exactly what it means, but there's a good chance if a Humboldt confronts you and starts violently flashing red, it could be telling a bunch of others you can't see that you're free eats. So likely the last thing you'll see is pulsing red before you get eaten alive. It doesn't help that satanic cephalopods are known for speed eating and are notorious for stripping fish to the bones faster than fishermen can reel them. Add a beak that can easily slice flesh and a bite force that can reportedly crack bone, and I think you see why I'm not exaggerating when I say I'll deal with every other fish on this list than a pack of predatory color coordinating squid. And I don't care what logic says, there's no doubt in my mind this squid would eat a human if they thought they could. Why? Humboldt squid only live about a year. That rapid growth in a short time means they'll rarely pass up an easy meal, even if it's their own kind. Humboldts are highly cannibalistic, and they will not hesitate to turn on a weak or injured member of their own hunting party. There was a study done off the coast of Chile that found that out of over 2,000 squid, more than half held the remains of their own kind in their stomachs. It sounds to me that anything they see as weaker than them is something they can feed off, and the only saving grace for us is they usually only press things smaller than they are. But you don't even have to be seen as food for affiliated squids to be a problem. Like a true xenophobic, they react to most things they don't understand with aggression, and they've even attacked cameras and equipment and left them out of order. But to me, the most disturbing aspect of getting assaulted by squids is, even if you escape, if you panic and surface too fast, you can get the bends and past tense anyway. That type of psychological horror is what puts the Humboldt here, and wouldn't you know, emotional damage is another symptom of finding out about the next fish. Cause now we got the stonefish. Not one of, but the most venomous fish known to man. It's armed with verrucotoxin, and symptoms of getting stung include crippling pain, shock, tissue death, and even paralysis. And speaking of pain, you can be in agony for over 12 hours, and it's enough of an eternal jihad to cause hallucinations. Anecdotally, there have been tourists who've stepped on a stonefish only to beg their doctors to chop off the whole foot. Then there's the added threat of, if you don't get out of the water quick enough, it won't even be the venom. You can get paralyzed and catch a stage fatality to drowning. Even if you survive, you can still suffer permanent nerve damage and severe muscle atrophy. But that all wouldn't even be that bad if the stonefish wasn't nature's manifestation of a dick move. The most venomous animals on the planet usually dress with bright colors to warn the rest of the population that they're packing. Stonefish decided to do exactly none of that and instead cosplays as a stone, only to mortally punish you for its camouflage working. Like I said, it's like having invisibility but also serving the death penalty every time someone steps on your foot. Then you gotta add the fact that there are another fish that can survive 24 hours out of the water, and they have a literal switchblade growing out of their forehead. Yeah, I knew they were a problem ever since one nearly perma-napped Nigel Thornberry. A stone-cloaking toxic minefield of misery, but with stonefish antivenom being the second most administered in Australia, today if you get stung, misery. But with stonefish antivenom being the second most administered in Australia, today if you get stung, your chances of surviving are actually pretty good. Not like the next fish, because for this one, there is no antidote.
Moral of the story, never go swimming in Australia. Never go to Australia either.
Stonefish might be the most venomous fish, but the pufferfish is arguably the most poisonous thing alive. Quick rule of thumb on the difference: if it bites you and you die, it's venomous. If you bite it and you become a wuzz, it's poisonous. And few things are more poisonous than puffer tetrodotoxin, which is 1,200 times more of a death sentence than cyanide. Tetrodotoxin interferes with signals between nerves and muscles, causing muscle paralysis and a total shutdown. And of course, the fugu blowfish is considered a delicacy, but if the chef misses a single cut even by a little, you're instantly on the clock.
Yeah, that's why I will never eat fugu.
You won't know that happened until your face goes numb and your lips and tongue get this weird prickling feeling. Then, you'd suddenly get a splitting headache and dizziness to go at vomiting and diarrhea as your body desperately tries to purge the poison. But it's already too late and you'd start getting paralyzed, starting with the hands and feet but slowly spreading out, and by this point, you likely can't even call for help. Finally, it'd get harder and harder to breathe until you notice the room slowly fade to black, leading to either a coma, seizure, or just death. The permanent kind. Tetrodotoxin essentially flips a kill switch in your body, and there is no antidote. The only treatment is hooking you up to a respirator to breathe for you and praying it passes. The poison puffball is such a problem, it makes you forget they also have teeth that can bite clean through your finger. In fact, it's more than enough to violate a scorpion. And I don't even know how to describe what they do to crabs. Turning crustacean into crustacean with a smile, no less, is criminal. There's nothing funny about getting caught in that bite, with reports of pufferfish mutilating the genitals of men, and one case in 2008 where a Cambodian child had his coin purse sliced in half by a puffer. Not like the kangaroo, this ain't a myth. Have your privates out by a puffer and you might just get... So that's 6 of the sinister 7, but before we get to the last one, we got honorable mentions. The fact that there's a fish that weaponized electricity enough to decommission a caiman and we just accept that is kinda crazy. And the thing is, it might not even be the voltage, but it's getting knocked out in shallow water that'll get you. Swordfish are one of the fastest things in the sea. They also have a built-in melee weapon equipped capable of inflicting life-altering harm. In 2015, a Hawaiian man was fatally struck in the chest while trying to catch one. Another man in Malaysia bled to death after a swordfish yeeted itself out of the water and also RNG'd him in the chest. Swordfish are also on record shanking sharks and even bleeding out sea turtles. The sheep's head fish. Really only because of that mouth. Trypophobics be damned. The Titan triggerfish is a highly aggressive honey badger with gills capable of dishing out severe injuries with the same...
Honey badgers are known for basically being immune to claws. Their skin and muscles stretch so it can't be cut easily.
They use for crunching coral, sea urchins, and even a crown of thorns starfish. The trigger might as well be named after their temper, and this 1.5-foot vibe check is a big reason why beginner divers never go back in the water. Speaking of big, the Goliath grouper. At 8 feet up to 800 pounds, the fish the size of a small car...
Wait, let me see the reference.
At 8 feet up to 800 pounds, the fish the size of a small car feels more like a leftover Jurassic prop. Lucky for us, most divers describe it as a gentle giant with the temperament of a Saint Bernard. Although a Saint Bernard didn't allegedly swallow an entire kid in the Florida Keys. Allegedly. But since we're on the subject, the last fish on this list are catfish. And yeah, that's kind of cheating. There's over 3,000 species of catfish, even including the genital jihad, the candiru. Catfish are like the trash compactors of the fish family, which isn't a problem until you see just how big they can really get. And once a catfish gets big enough, there aren't a lot of things alive they won't try to eat. We've seen armadillos, turtles, and even unaware seagulls get bored by a catfish. There's a species in France that figured out how to stalk and hunt bathing city pigeons. Another learned to wait by cave entrances to suck up any exhausted bats that fall in. There was even a catfish nicknamed Kuno the Killer who terrorized a German lake and somehow caught and ate someone's dog. Basically, they're all talking about pelicans being just in fish form. The question is, if a catfish has ever eaten a live human, and it isn't even if they would, but if they could. The Wells catfish can grow to 10 feet long and cap out at 300 pounds. The Mekong catfish can also get to 10 feet, and the heaviest one ever recorded was pushing 650 pounds. If there's a catfish that could stomach a human, it should be one of these, but there's a slightly smaller catfish that was believed to be a legit man-eater. In the late 90s and early 2000s, a series of fatal attacks on people in the Gully River had people convinced there was something in the water hunting humans. In these attacks, victims were suddenly pulled underwater in front of people, only for their bodies to never be recovered. In 2007, Atal Kumar was swimming with friends when he was violently dragged underwater, and while he was never seen again, friends caught a glimpse of something that they could only describe as an elongated pig. Crocs and bull sharks were considered, but the prime suspect ended up being the goonch. At about over 6 feet, 200 pounds, the goonch is usually smaller than the
Way to make it sound nowhere near as threatening as it is.
whales in the Mekong. But it's feared that the practice of burning funeral pyres by the river led to the equal opportunists developing a taste for human flesh. And while it's a stretch to say a corpse-happy catfish could swallow an adult, it becomes a little less believable with children. There's no solid proof of a catfish catching a person, but they for sure can off one. The biggest ones can easily overpower you, if not just knock you out and drown you. Not to mention a majority are venomous, with those spines putting both experienced fishermen and oblivious bystanders in the hospital. They also have a nasty sandpaper-like bite that can easily draw blood. But what really makes them a living horror movie is their intelligence. The ones packing up pigeons, they weren't always doing that, but they pretty much ate everything else around them and were forced to adjust. So it's anyone's guess what could happen if they gain a taste for humans. And with catfish being swimming tongues with over 175,000 taste buds across their bodies, yeah, I doubt acquiring taste takes long. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Make sure you drink water, hug your mother, try not to get catfished out here. If you'd like to see me swim with slightly less freaky fish, the full GoPro footage of me in Hawaii will be uploaded to my Patreon. And with that last second self-promo out the way,
Alright. Oh wait, wrong. We're gonna do a raid. I'm done.
They slam on the table. When you get like a portion of fries or something.